A passenger plane has collided with a military helicopter mid-air in Washington, D.C. A search and rescue operation is underway.
This plane was actually truly within seconds of touching down when all this happened. The type of plane, when it comes into land, it's going to be 150 miles an hour. So the collision, the kinetic energy of that, absolutely immense.
Routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things, it does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made.
Saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring, and what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been.
How you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash?
Because I have common sense. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
I'm telling you right now, and they can kill me for saying it, but under no circumstance is a military helicopter, especially a fucking Black Hawk, gonna accidentally crash into a commercial plane. Like, there's no way. And get this, the call sign on the helicopter was PAT 25. That means priority air transport. So what's on that helicopter, you know? Obviously something's not adding up here.
We have breaking news of an American Airlines flight colliding mid-air with a Black Hawk helicopter. And there's speculation on how this possibly happened. And if you don't already know, there was 60 passengers and 4 crew members on the American Airlines flight, and they believe there was 3 passengers aboard the Black Hawk helicopter. And what we believe right here, that speck that's flying towards the American Airlines flight is the helicopter, and then they collide, and over the river is where all of the debris fell. And what we're looking at here is the radar sources from the air traffic control. Now, it seems to be that there was a broadcast that went out to the American Airlines flight asking it to reroute to a shorter runway. That's why you're seeing this curvature happening here. And the Black Hawk helicopter was believed to be on a training mission. There were reports that weather did not play a factor in the collision, but we can see a rerouting happening. We believe that this could quite possibly be the air traffic controller asking the plane to land on the shorter runway, and the military helicopter being in their way at that point and then colliding. Here we have search and rescue teams looking for the helicopter, which they found upside down in the river. 19 bodies were pulled from the river from the plane, but we do not know their condition as of yet, but I will keep you guys up to date as the story unfolds.
Go ahead and call me crazy. This is a jet. This is a helicopter. Watch. Why is this important? A Black Hawk helicopter flew into a commercial jet over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Oh, it was just an accident. It was just an accident. I'll die before you convince me of that. Come at me, bro. Why don't you think it's an accident? Let me give you a little backstory on this. I don't know who was on the plane. I don't know who was in the helicopter. Okay, what I do know is that in that area of the Potomac River, it's common for helicopters to fucking fly around. They're supposed to stay at or below 200 feet AGL, which is above ground level. That helicopter collided with that plane at 350 foot above ground level, somewhere it was not supposed to be. The airplane was in a landing pattern coming into the airport with its landing lights on. And you mean to tell me that the super crazy high amount of technology that's in this military helicopter, and with the pilots flying under visual flight rules, that those 2 pilots, there were 3 people aboard the helicopter, that those 2 pilots didn't see that fucking plane and they didn't try to avoid it? You mean to tell me that those highly trained, highly skilled pilots didn't see that fucking plane? That's not even why I'm questioning all of this. This is where it happened. Who's this guy? That guy right there is this guy. This guy, flown by the Air Force. But what's the significance of that? This is the plane I'm talking about that landed at Andrews Air Force Base just next to where this shit happened. Why was a Boeing E-4 known as the Night Watch or the Doomsday plane, which is a militarized version of the Boeing 747 that serves as a mobile command post for the U.S. military and is a key component of the National Military Command System, which is designed to survive a nuclear attack? Why was that diverted right after this happened and then landed at Andrews Air Force Base right next to the Potomac River? Why? That's not suspicious. This helicopter had to have seen this plane. I don't know why. I don't know what led to it. Call me a conspiracy theorist all you want. That shit's weird.
I'm telling you right now, something is seriously wrong. An American Airlines passenger plane went down last night after colliding with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter. I have family who is very high up in the Air Force. Literally, here's a picture of me at the base in Hawaii last Christmas. And I also have friends who are cabin crew at American Airlines. And here's what people are talking about that no one is telling you and why this is extremely alarming. Before we get into all of that, let's set the stage. American Airlines regional jet flight 5342 was coming in from Wichita, Kansas, preparing to land in Ronald Reagan National Airport. Just before touchdown, it collided with the U.S. Army UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter right over the Potomac River. As of an hour ago, the search and rescue mission has officially been changed to a recovery mission because they no longer believe that there are any survivors. So far, 29 bodies have been recovered from the plane and 1 body has been recovered from the helicopter. A total of 67 people were on board both aircrafts, including a U.S. national figure skating team that was coming back from a competition, 2 of whom were former Russian national champions. So these are the facts, but what I'm about to tell you suggests that this is more than just a tragic accident. Let's not forget that this happened on approach to our nation's capital. Here's what I've been told from my family that's high up in the Air Force. 1, a collision at this altitude in this airspace is extremely rare. There are multiple layers of traffic control whose entire job is to ensure that things like this do not happen. 2, collisions at night almost never happen. Every aircraft is equipped with anti-collision lights, strobes, and traffic collision avoidance system, which would have warned both pilots of an incoming threat. 3, not all airspace is created equally. The area around D.C. is Class B airspace, which is the most restrictive and controlled airspace in the entire country. This is not a place where aircraft just happen to run into each other. So now here's my take. Donald Trump, our president, got on Twitter this morning and said, and I quote, "This looks like it could have been prevented." So is this a case of hiding in plain sight, a cover-up, or truly just an accident that shocked everyone? One thing is for sure, this is suspicious and we should not ignore it.
3 different things happen. First of all, they only had a crew of 3. And if you're flying a visual flight plan in a crowded airspace like this, they really should have had 2 crew chiefs in the back of the helicopter to clear each side, as the pilots only have visibility from straight ahead 12 to 3 o'clock, or 12 from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. So you only have visibility of the front 180 degrees. Your crew chiefs clear the back. If you only have 1 crew chief, how much can you clear? The second one is, it is, whether they were on night vision goggles at that time or not, it is a very cluttered airspace with a lot of lighting and the lights reflecting on the river. And so with that, it's easy to kind of get a little disoriented as far as the height. They were supposed to be at 200 feet, which is the helicopter routing in that area, and it wouldn't have been a conflict. But they were not at 200 feet. Obviously, reportedly, the incident happened at around 350 to 400 feet as the airliner was descending. So that they were at the wrong height. So that's a pilot error. The first would be a policy error or choice. And then the third is air traffic control said, do you have the CRJ in sight? Well, there were two aircraft in their field of view, and actually only one was really obvious to them. And that was if you watch the video, the aircraft taking off in the foreground is probably the one they were facing, the pilots were facing, and said, yeah, I got it. The air traffic control should have said, do you have the aircraft at 5 o'clock? So they were looking at the rear. If they had done that, the Black Hawk is maneuverable. The Black Hawk could have moved out of the way quickly. They can move on a dime and make that happen.
What is going on? Look at this. Just 24 hours before the American Airlines Flight 5342 collided with the Black Hawk military helicopter at Reagan National Airport, another separate American Airlines flight had to abort landing due to a helicopter crossing its flight path at the same exact airport. This was American Airlines Flight 4514, and as you can see here, it can be seen on radar having to go around and make a second attempt to land because a helicopter was in its flight path. This just adds more to all of the questions people have as to what really happened last night in D.C. at Reagan National Airport.
Also, Paul Wagner is being told that they're being taken to the MPD helipad off South Capitol Street. So this is some good news that we know that those first responders are finding survivors there in those waters.
A lot of people are pointing, Jonathan and Kevin, to the video that has come out of this because what's so surprising is that that's not usual for us to see in real time what happened. But because this airport is so closely watched in D.C., all the local TV stations have cameras on it. A lot of people also, I've seen dash cameras from Ubers and stuff like that. There have been multiple angles of this crash caught on camera. That, yes, will be a huge help to investigate.
We've heard from President Trump today talking about DEI hiring policies within the FAA and associating that with the cause of this accident. What do you say to that?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't hear the remarks. I was briefing House and Senate members, but I believe, Chair, would you like to take them?
As part of any investigation, we look at the human, the machine, and the environment. So we will look at all the humans that were involved in this accident. Again, we will look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating in. That is standard in any part of our investigation.
Does it hurt your investigative process to have the president already suggesting possible causes here as you try to keep an open mind and begin this investigation?
Tom, with all due respect, I think the press also likes to state what probable cause is before we get to the probable cause. So what I'm going to say is you need to give us time. You need to give NTSB, it's not that we don't have information. We do have information. We have data. We have substantial amounts of information. We need to verify information. We need to take our time to make sure it is accurate. That's best for you. That's important for the families. It's important for legislators who are seeking answers to try to figure out what they're going to do about this. And so it will take time. We do have a lot of information, but we need some time to verify that.
Back when I was in ROTC, I had the opportunity to fly in D.C., which is considered the most restricted airspace in the world. These military pilots have a very thorough pre-flight checklist that was required to go over before flying, like any professional pilot has to go over. When I heard about the American Airlines Flight 5342, it saddened me to hear about the catastrophic event regarding the Black Hawk that collided with the commercial flight, because these military pilots have very thorough briefings and super advanced flight radar with current flight paths and an anti-flight collision system, so something about this incident just doesn't seem right.
As of today, January 30th, 2025, there has been 64 aircraft accidents. 64 aircraft accidents that resulted in fatalities on the ground. Now, I bring you this statistic because of the most recent one that just took place today, Washington D.C. plane crash, where there are no survivors. Firstly, my condolences go out to the families that are affected by the plane crash. My prayers are with you. But I remember when the statistic that everybody loved to talk about was you were more likely to die in a car accident than in a plane crash. And now I'm not too sure how I feel about that. I don't think that statistic is correct in today's times. Within the first week of this month, there were 6 plane crashes. I would know because I made a video about it. You could just scroll down to my page, January 6th, and I made a video about it. But a lot of us were not really up in arms like we should have been. You know, we've gotten numb. We've gotten numb to a lot of things that they were doing in this government, right? And when the news about this DC plane crash came about, I started asking questions. I always ask questions, and I implore you guys to ask questions too, because I swear to God, that's how you'll save yourself. Did you know that a week ago, Trump fired the heads of TSA, Coast Guard, and completely removed a key aviation safety advisory committee? The words that were actually used is gutted. He completely gutted. He removed it, right? This aviation committee carries out the examining of safety issues at airlines and airports. This committee was mandated by Congress after the 1988 Pan Am 103 bombing. Okay? Now, the committee still exists. There's no members. There's no employees to carry out the work. You understand? That was a week ago. Then I find out that he fired them for Elon. He fired it for his man. Let me read it to you guys. The Federal Aviation Administration currently has no Senate confirmed leader after top administrator Michael Whitaker was forced out under pressure from Elon Musk, who demanded his resignation in September for proposing fines of more than $600,000 for SpaceX over safety concerns. So Elon didn't want to have to deal with certain fines because he likes to play with his little aircraft shit in the air, right? He didn't want to have to deal with any fines. So he forced the person who would be in charge of figuring out what happened to this crash, or probably the people who would have caught whatever could have caused the crash to begin with. They were pushed out. They were forced to resign because Elon didn't want to have to pay any fines.
These videos obtained exclusively by CNN show previously unseen angles of the collision between an American Airlines flight and a US Army Black Hawk helicopter. In the first video, the Black Hawk can be seen flying at speed over the Potomac from the left side of the screen. The American Airlines plane can be seen flying towards the airport before the two collide, causing a midair explosion and fall into the river. In a second video, you can see the Army helicopter and American Airlines plane travel toward each other. After the collision and subsequent explosion, the airliner can be seen spinning into the water, and the Black Hawk is also seen falling into the water.
So here's some thoughts from an air traffic controller, pilot, and somebody who lives and flies out of the DC area. I mean, I got to say this. I even hesitate to film this because people on the internet will take this in a completely different direction. I am not a commercial airline pilot, never have been. I was an air traffic controller, but for the military, never been an FAA controller, and never worked at DC Reagan. So I do not claim to be an expert in any of those areas. What I would like to do is shed a little bit of light into potential issues that would arise by any pilot or any controller in this environment. And this mainly goes to answer some of the questions that I'm getting from close friends and family. So number one, location. I mean, the airspace around DC Reagan is unbelievably scripted and structured. There is a lot of traffic. There's a lot of low-level traffic. There's a lot of military, presidential aircraft. It is not uncommon to see helicopters extremely low near the flight path. None of that is out of the ordinary. Second potential struggles is nighttime. Now, the benefit is the weather was fantastic, very clear, minimal wind. But, you know, at nighttime, you get disoriented and you're over water. You get disoriented. You've got city lights in the background that can blind you. If for some reason the Army helicopter pilots were on NVDs or night vision devices, while that helps them see at night, it's like looking through a straw. So limited, very limited visibility, if that was actually the case. From the American airline pilot, if you look at any of the radar footage, you're going to see that they're close to landing. I believe that they were also in a slight turn. So the one thing to note is as an aircraft is coming into land, it slows down, lift is reduced. The only way they can keep enough lift and to maintain an appropriate descent profile without going too fast is to raise the nose and change the angle of attack. The problem is when you pitch the nose up to maintain lift, you essentially create a blind spot underneath of you. So that helicopter, from watching radar data, was slightly below the nose of the airplane. And then additionally, if there was a turn to the runway, which I believe there was, landing runway 33, there's potential that the aircraft had to put its belly of the airplane in a left-hand turn, puts the belly to the right, which is exactly where the helicopter potentially was. And then having spent 14 years as a controller, I know that lots of traffic, giving traffic calls, and when an aircraft reports somebody in sight, that is the air traffic controller's way of ensuring separation in these types of airspaces. It is a see and avoid type scenario. Maybe there was miscalculation on which aircraft they were looking at. Maybe it was the lights in the background. Maybe they did actually have it in sight. And then as they're running checklists and communicating and aviating and navigating, maybe they lost that aircraft for a particular second. So again, I post this cautiously. I am not an FAA controller. I am not an American Airlines pilot. I am not speculating what happened, and I'm not speculating at all who's to blame. Right now, our focus goes on, number one, recovering the bodies, taking care of the family. Number two is making sure that we learn from this and we do not find ourselves in these scenarios again. Number three, I would like to think that leadership of a country would not immediately start pointing fingers towards finding what caused this without any actual or factual data. Instead, let's rally around our people, our country, and take care of those who are hurting. Thanks.
This is the most upsetting thing I've heard in a while. You may or may not have heard yet. The Army has identified two of the pilots of the helicopter that crashed a couple nights ago, and they've identified them as Chief Warrant Officer 2 Andrew Eves and Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara. They perished. Condolences to the families. However, there's a third pilot, a woman, and the family of this woman has requested that her name not be released. I don't know, but it certainly feels like the family doesn't want her name being released for fear of being criticized or denigrated because she's a woman who is a helicopter pilot. And the president has already blamed DEI, presumably the idea that she might have been unqualified. And it feels like they're scared to identify their daughter. Because they're afraid of the blowback. And that's terrible. We thank all of them for their service.
The Army just released the pilot's name of the Black Hawk helicopter that collided with the American Airlines flight 2 days ago, and her name is Rebecca Lobach. Rebecca was one of the 3 soldiers that passed away in the collision with the American Airlines flight a few nights ago, and she was only 28 years old. Rebecca was a White House aide to Joe Biden when he was in the White House, and then joined the Army as an aviation officer in July of 2019. She had been awarded the Army Commendation Medal, the Army Achievement Medal, National Defense Service Medal, and the Army Service Ribbon. Now, we knew the name of the other 2 soldiers on the Black Hawk helicopter relatively soon, but her family asked that the Army not release her name until they were ready. They said in a statement, "We are devastated by the loss of our beloved Rebecca. She was a bright star in our lives. Rebecca was a warrior and would not hesitate to defend her country in battle." Lobach was from Durham, North Carolina, and she enlisted in the National Guard back in college in 2018.